Welcome to Stroke of Genius podcast executive experience. Have I got a real special guest for you today?
I'm Trisha Ben, CEO of C-Suite Network, and on behalf of Aaron Avila, it is my honor to introduce my business partner, Jeffrey Hayzlett. He's a globally renowned business celebrity, accomplished speaker, best-selling author, and an expert in business transformation. He's the primetime television host of C-Suite with Jeffrey Hayzlett, Executive Perspectives Live, and the award-winning All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett on C-Suite Radio and C-Suite TV. As the former global chief marketing officer of Eastman Kodak and a Hall of Fame speaker and the chairman founder of C-Suite Network and best-selling author of 4 best-selling business books, you're in for a powerful conversation here on Stroke of Genius.
And to me, he's more than just a businessman. He's a friend of mine. And our topic today is going to be success mindset and how your mindset will direct your business. So let me play us a bumper and I'll bring you on camera after this.
Welcome to the Stroke of Genius podcast executive experience, the business podcast that shines a spotlight on the brilliance behind your business. We are here to uncover strategies, stories, and insight that drive success in today's dynamic world. And now, introducing your host, CEO and visionary, Aaron Avila.
Well, there he is. There's my guest, Jeff Hayzlett. Jeff, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. It's good to be able to catch up. You and I don't always get to talk often. We see each other occasionally at one of our events, but we don't always get to talk like this, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, it's hard for me not to mention now what success mindset we're talking about today. I want you to stop right there, get right into, because we only have 30 minutes for that, which is with each other. But Jeff, I'm curious. I've known you for years, but I've never really found out what point in your life that you had that strike of genius or that point we said, hey, I like this. I'm going to have to business. What age were you and what happened?
Well, it was actually when I was really young, like 12, 13, something like that. I was out selling all the time. I was always like hawking like barbecue tickets for the baseball team, stuff like that, selling subscriptions to True Grit magazine, which most people don't even know what that was. And I was making money by doing that kind of activity. And I just really liked it. I've always been stuffing mailboxes. I lived in a trailer park years ago. I grew up in, not with a lot of money. And so we lived in a trailer park. And I remember I was like 7, 8 years old and they'd pay me literally, I think it was like $7 or $8. And I would go around and put all the leaflets in all the post office box in the trailer park, which is a pretty big job. Took me, like half a day to be able to do that. But, I just knew that back then I just liked making money. I liked doing that kind of stuff. It just felt natural to me, and I just kept doing it.
Yeah, that kind of really, really rigidifies what I think. I think everybody has a gift in life. And I think that everybody has a purpose. It sounds like your gift for business. There's no really defining moment. You're always that way. You're always inclined to business.
Yeah.
And at what point? Now, you would also the CMO of Eastman Kodak, household name Kodak. But at what point did you step from, well, let's say small time business to going more big time, more mainstream business?
Yeah, probably more in my 20s. I made the first million in when I was 26. I think it was 26 years old. So, but I started doing a lot of different businesses. But back then I was doing, I had this kind of business, this kind of business, this kind of business. And I was, kind of doing them all up into my early 30s. And probably about the time I hit my mid 30s, that's when I started like adding a lot more zeros and getting more involved, and doing things at a much bigger level. I can remember when I was in my 30s, doing some fairly big business stuff. Even in my 20s, I was doing a lot of it, but it was more political because I was doing a lot of campaigns, political stuff, and PR, public relations, and, positioning on campaigns, things like that. But it was probably in my 30s where I really just started adding a lot more zeros. I was always, I was this guy from South Dakota, and I figured I could go do this in other states. I didn't have to be limited at a local level. I could go do this anywhere. And the second I got that understanding, well, then the sky was the limit, and then I started working my ways into bigger boardrooms, bigger kind of companies, and doing things at a bigger level. And I've always been that guy, Aaron, that could come up with a slogan, come up with the key value proposition in a company very quickly, and then see the steps you had to do to get there, and then and figure that out in a literally like in a millisecond, knowing that this is all the things. And people would say to me sometimes, "We hadn't even think about it." Oh yeah, I did. I was always able to make those connections fairly quickly.
Yeah, Jeff, come on, that's got to be a gift, bro. It seems like something that's not normal. So give you that a gift. I really appreciate it. I'm glad you have it because,
Well, and I appreciate you saying that. I don't think of it like that, although I get it. I think everybody can think like this or do this kind of stuff. So it's always surprising to me. But then I know that not everybody can, and not everybody does. And, not everybody has the energy for it too. I'm constantly always, a couple things that people say, about me. And by the way, this isn't bragging, it's not bragging when it's true. It's just, when you see this stuff, but, people say, geez, you're always so authentic. Well, geez, it's hard enough being yourself. Why would you want to be somebody else? That's one. So I'm comfortable about who I am or what I am, and what I want and how I want to do it. So and especially as you get older, you get a little bit more clear about it. I think the more successful you are about things too, I think that helps you get clear about it. But yeah, and then the fact that, I work hard, and people, to me, well, that's what you do, but other people who would always, they're always pat me on the back and give me those kinds of, accolades. And I'm just going like, well, geez, I don't know what else you would do,
Yeah, I think that's a big impression on me is your authenticity. I mean, I've never seen. It's been a big inspiration for me because, when you and I first met, as people understand, when I first met Jeff Hayzlett, our winning mindset that we're talking about in business today, actually, I met when he first published his book, Think Big, Act Bigger. And it's all about mindset. And it was all about how your mindset changes everything. And I was just had my stroke and my brain has an aneurysm, and it did literally save my life. Saved me. So let's talk a little bit about that mindset. How you obviously have the mindset. What would you say is the biggest mindset factor deficiency? People, what? What do you see them deficient?
Well, I years ago, Aaron, I did not an interview, but a meeting with some really high-end celebrities. Like one of the major talent agencies in the world invited me to come and speak to some really big A-level celebrities, and to talk to them about the power of their personal brand and how to do that. I was on the front cover of Forbes magazine. They named me the celebrity CMO, and way back when, and so they come and ask me to speak to these folks about building a personal brand and that mindset. Right, it was really around mindset. And one of the things that one of these, I mean, we're talking about some really big A-listed people. Like, holy crap, man, these are big names. They're, these are marquee, getting lots of money to do a motion picture, lots of money to do TV shows, so forth. And, one of them said, Jeff, well, what do you do about the voices in your head? And I said, what voices? And they said, those voices. I said, yes, of course I know what voices you are. I just said I stopped listening to them a long time ago. I try, I have voices of doubt, just like everybody else. You have things that you've had failures, certainly, but failures are nothing but steps along success. So, it's not about failing fast, it's about winning fast. And it's just about, turning that on and saying, what is it I want to do? What is it I want to get? What problem am I solving? Where do I want to go? And understanding your conditions of satisfaction around that, and then just developing, an attitude that's what you're going to do to get it done. So, when I said, hey, what voice are you talking about? I knew what voices that he was talking about. I just said, I stopped listening to. I don't listen to him like that anymore. I pretty much just think I can do anything for the most part, or at least I know what I can do and what I can't do. Right. I kind of have a good understanding what I'm good at and what I'm not. And, I just try to keep improving on that.
Well, that's a winning basic mindset when you can identify what you. Cause I'm going to point out for a minute. You said, "Well, I'm good. I can know what I'm good at and what I'm not." I think when we're not good at something and try to do it, well, let's just say it doesn't work out very well.
Well, don't apply the things you're not good at across the board. I mean, if you're not, if let's talk about, like being an athlete, and I know you were an athlete as well. I'm not fast. When I played football, when I played rugby, you could measure my speed with a calendar. That's how,
Right.
that's how fast I was, which means I wasn't fast. Well, I have to understand I'm kind of one of those guys that will never run the ball, right? In fact, they should probably look at me and say, don't even look at the ball. You're a lineman. This is your job, but if I were to apply that, I can't run to everything else in my life, then I would be a kind of a failure. I'd be depressed most of the time. So there's just certain things that, no, I'm not good at that. So therefore, don't even let me do it. Don't even have me do it, and I've always been that way as a young adult, or, and even when I was a lot younger, a teenager, where I just said, no, I can't do that. I'm not good at that. So, like the other day I was with somebody and they said, we were talking about music or something. And they said, well, how about you? Do you play? I said, no, I'm a listener. You got to have listeners, and that, I like to play. I played the guitar. I sang back in high school, but I sucked. The reason they had me on the choir was because I was a student body president, and I would, was popular and all that stuff. And I would bring other people with me. That's the only reason why the band instructor or choral director said, come try out, come be a part of this, and put me in the show choir, for God's sakes. Do I look like I should be in a show choir? In no way, shape, or form. So, but I was there for, I was there as a lure, as a, fresh meat, as a bait. To get other people in there. And that's, so once you understand that's your role, that's okay.
Yeah, I think I understand. Let me make sure I understand it correctly. That don't focus on what you can't do. Focus on what you can do.
Yeah.
And really explode that. Really know where your lane is and go for it.
I think it makes you stronger, Aaron. I think it makes you understanding, the things by the way, especially as you get older, or, let's look at you and your situation. You understand there's certain things, you're not going to be lifting up things like you used to, right? You're not going to be, rushing across the rooms like you used to. Okay, got it. No, move on. But you can't do this. You can't get this done. And the same thing I think is true for me. I can't lift things like I used to. I still think I'm 30 years old, but heck, I'm in my 60s now. And, I can't work outside like I used to and do the things I used to. Okay, got it. I'm fine with that. But I can, that's okay. I can make more money and hire people to do that maybe, and or get my grandkids over here and get them doing it. Maybe I could do that.
Yeah, I think it's part of being okay with the way you are. Like you just said at the beginning of this podcast, you got to be authentic. You know that you better than you. You gotta know your strengths and your weaknesses. I think it's part of what, right? Am I right? Part of being successful in business is knowing your strengths and weaknesses.
Without question. And And then I think it's also a little bit of with that. So as you get comfortable with that, not just comfortable, but you get empowered by that, well, then you can walk with a little bit more swagger, in terms of what you can do. And I think that's where you try to focus the positive. And that's, again, that's all I've ever tried to do.
Yeah, I gonna take it a little more personal because I was at a point in my life when I just had my brain aneurysm stroke, and I felt like I couldn't do anything. I was half paralyzed. I could at that time I could barely talk. At least I carrying the conversation now, and it was where I realized when I met you on YouTube, it said "Think Big, Act Bigger," and then I started going, "Hey, I can have an attitude. I can have I can do attitude." So to that, I wore that, and here I am today. Look, I'm interviewing you.
Well, you got your own show. You're a show host. You're a primetime show
Mhm.
host. I mean, that's amazing. You're a headliner. That's amazing. I mean, to think that guys like you and I can do that, I think I think it's unbelievable. Most of us most people would tell you and I that we have a face for radio. We shouldn't probably be doing
Right.
video and stuff like that. But, I just think that's important. And by the way, I want to get back to the title of the book. Somebody asked me why I wrote Think Big, Act Bigger, because, so many times I hear people give me stories. That's another piece. They think big, but they don't act bigger, which means get it done, implement it, do it, and then do it beyond the level of what you thought you were going to do. And that's what I think is real critical. Not just do it by, I'm the best business here. Well, what if I want to be the best business everywhere? And then sometimes I get involved. I remember I was at what was it, Camp Friendship or something. I can't remember the name of this conference up in Canada, but I was doing this conference in Canada. It's held at a kids camp where where there's beds made for 9-year-olds, 10 years old, and they got cabins everywhere, and they bring all these entrepreneurs in, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And I keynoted this a couple of times, and I remember this one guy coming up to me during the conference and was talking to me. I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, and I'm gonna do this, and that's when it triggered. When he said I'm gonna do this, I said, well, how much of that are you actually doing? And he goes, well, we're gonna do it. I go, well, then it's a story, So I'm real important about moving people beyond the story, and we get into stories about ourselves and we get stuck with these stories, like you said, a bad attitude, bad mindset. And I think it's important for us to get beyond the story to act bigger. And that is to do it beyond what you're thinking about doing and getting it to where you want to really be. And then even better. I think that's, I try to over deliver all the time, wherever I possibly can, over communicate, over deliver, over the bottom line, so to speak.
Let me ask you about that because it could be important. I want to make sure I understand it. Over deliver, over everything. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think in everything that we do in life, there's a mutual condition of satisfaction. So with you and I, right? We have a certain way that we do things and a certain way that we operate. Well, I want to do things for you in a manner that you just go like, wow, all the time. And so in my relationships, in my businesses, I might say, hey, I'm going to deliver this much profitability, this much growth, this much market share, this much brand valuation. But then if I can go, over deliver and do it beyond what I promised, well, then I've more than met the conditions of satisfaction. There's no way you'll ever bitch about it. There's no way you'll ever moan about it. And you'll just sit there and go, wow, there's a guy who's, a stand up, does it all every time. And then, delivers that little extra that nobody thought that they would do. I try to do that. I try to be nice most of the time. I say most of the time because sometimes we're just grumpy, then I'm a kind of a grumpy, kind of like irritable kind of older guy. So that's just goes with the territory. So, but I do try to do my best to please and thank you. And, I said last night I was on a flight late at night, a very long flight. We, got diverted to another city, took hours and so forth. finally got to my plane with minutes to spare, sitting down next to the other woman. She was upset, complaining about the delays because of weather, and I finally said, well, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And yeah, I think she was younger than, I'm pretty sure she was younger than me or about the same age. And she goes, she was surprised that I would speak to her that way. It's like, but it's the way I was brought up. I think those are the things you kind of do.
Yeah, I can imagine a guy like you, but you're both you're always busy, always going. But what you said something earlier I wanted to touch on real quick before we go, because we have a few more minutes here. But you said anybody can be like you.
Sure.
I want the audience right now to hear that statement. Jeff Hayzlett is telling us that we can be like him. And meaning we can walk with swagger, we can, which I picked up, we can have a little bit of attitude of Jeff Hayzlett, which I picked up. But how does the average person go to that next level, take it to the next level,
Well, I think it's important So I appreciate you saying be like me. I think what you should do is be like yourself. You should be yourself. You should be grounded in who you are, what you are, but to take it with the attitude of that much more, whatever that is, and focus in on the values that are core to you. All right. And hopefully those are good values, because not everybody has great values. There's some people that have bad values. I wrote a book called The Hero Factor, and of companies that have that hero factor, who put people above profits. That's an amazing thing to do, because we find that those companies that do that, gross more revenue, make more net more revenue, have employees who are engaged in the company at a greater level than where employees are engaged with companies today. They have vendors who want to do business with them, and they're respected by their communities. And that's amazing, right? To have that. So those are great values, who live with values. But there are other companies I know that live with poor values or have no values. So when I say live to your values, hopefully those are values that are above average. That's what we'd love to see. And I think most people should try to be above average in everything that we try to do, because that just makes everything a better experience and a better life.
Yeah, that's so neat, because that really, because it came across strong. But when I said be like you, your attitude, the way you're relentless, the way you're just not you. I can't be you, and I don't want to be you. I love you, Bill, but I don't want to be you. But I'm just saying that attitude everybody can have. Everybody can have winning mindset.
Absolutely. It's a choice that we have to make. And some people say, well, I don't have a choice because it's a shitty day, or I'm always losing, or I'm doing that. Well, okay. That happens to me all the time too. There are days I just don't want to get up some days. Right. But you got to get up. You have to do it, because the alternative is a lot worse. So, whether you suffer a stroke like you have done, and you just decide, hey, am I going to be like this the rest of my life? No, I'm going to go on and be a primetime television host. I'm going to be a headliner on a national and worldwide podcast network. I mean, that's amazing for people to be able to do, and that's a mindset that just says, I'm going to be that, but that much more. And I think I think that is a very special thing that you drink. I think it's a special Kool-Aid that you have to have from time to time. And by the way, we have to refresh ourselves, because it's tough. It's not easy doing the things that a lot of us have to do every day, but that's what we sign up for. A number of years ago, I was on a board of a publicly traded company, and the chairman of that company tried to take the company over in a way that wasn't necessarily, I think, the most ethical nor the most legal way. When you're on a board of a public company, and you want to buy the company, there's certain steps that you have to go through in order to buy that company. Now, you might very well end up with it, but you still have to go through those steps. And as a board member, it's my responsibility to make sure that you adhere to that process, so that the shareholders get the greatest value of that interaction. And then you're not taking it at a below fair market price. And so I took on to this chairman and said, hey, you can't do that. You have to do it this way. You might very well end up with the company, as I said, but you have to go through these steps. Well, that's going to cost me millions. Well, Bubba, that's the price of admission. That's what it cost. And I got other board members who were inside board members, meaning board members who came when he bought the company. I was the only independent member. And of course, I got them together and we said, no, we can't do it that way. Obviously, the SEC agreed with us, although we made the front page of the Wall Street Journal in this transaction because we were hostile to the takeover of that chairman who owned a majority of the company. Now, nonetheless, that's what we did. And I remember during that process, Aaron, I was sued. The other board members were sued. The chairman was sued. The shareholders sued us. The partners sued us. Everybody did it because we're legally the head of the company. And I had investment in that company. Stock went down, lost the stock, lost the money, wasn't getting paid for being on the board because we recused ourselves at that time from this transaction because we would have benefited from it, so forth and so on. And my wife finally said to me, so why were you doing all this stuff? I said, well, it's what good people do, right? So sometimes you have to, put those values at the forefront. You have to do the things you sometimes don't like to do. It was a pain in the rear end. I mean, are you kidding me? Who wants to be, sued, and who wants to lose money? Who wants to do all those stuff? But I just said it's what good people do. And that's what we sign up to do from time to time.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, we have a few minutes left, but Jeff, I think the attitude for me has been that you prescribed have a can-do attitude. I'm going to put links to all Jeff's books in the description of this video. And Jeff, what final words would you say about having a successful mindset? What do I need to do to go up one more level, to keep going up?
Well, I think one of the biggest things that my son, who's I think one of the best chief marketing officers I've ever met, I thought I was pretty good until he grew up and then started working with me. And, he always says, Dad, hey, what problem are we solving? And I think that's the first thing you have to kind of decide. What is it what you want to be when you grow up? What is it you're trying to get done? What is it you want accomplished? And then with that, I think it's important for you to understand your own conditions of satisfaction. What is it you want to drive with the way that you want to do it? Like I have simple ones. I want to build wealth for me and my family, which means I want to have my family and my grandchildren grow up in a different life than I grew up and have the ability to do the things that they need to. And that's building wealth. And wealth comes in all kinds of ways. It comes in not just money, but comes in knowledge, comes in education, comes in having fun. It comes in being surrounded with all the people that are important around you. So wealth, that's one. The second is I want to learn new things. I like to do things where I learn and grow. And then the third thing is I want to have fun doing that. I don't want to be surrounded with assholes. I don't want to be surrounded by people who I don't want to have fun with. So I try to set myself up for that. So I think having that attitude, so your environment in which you're going to operate, I think is critical too. So sometimes that means you got to move. Sometimes you got to get to a different job. Sometimes you might have to get out of the marriage you're in. Luckily I've never had that problem, but those are things I think you have to have consideration. And so that you have to work on the environment, understand where you want to go and what you want to be when you grow up, and then feed the engine. That's the other piece of it. You got to feed yourself with positive stuff. You got to feed yourself with and be surrounding yourself with other people who have similar kinds of mindset, who are kicking you, knocking you down, telling you you're an idiot all the time. Because there are sometimes you're an idiot, but you don't need to have people remind you of that.
All right. There. Well, we're down to the last few minutes, but I really want to say something. You mentioned taking a break. Have that day of the week that you kind of relax, take it, you get with your comrades. Now, I'm a member of your C-suite network. But every Friday, I'm assuming yes, I could invite everybody.
Sure.
Put links, email me. Let me know you want to come with me as my guest to C-suite celebrates every Friday. What is that about?
So every Friday, I just decided during COVID, that's where it got started. But now I think we're in our I don't know, 500th week. I don't know,
Wow.
something like that. It's a lot. We're in a lot of them at this point. Well over 200 and some. That's what it is. And anyway, I decided, on Friday nights, I used to always like to get together at the end of the week and go and celebrate with my friends. That is, go to the Irish bar in New York City, Scallywags, and I'd meet up with a couple of friends, and we give each other some high fives or pat in the back because we had a great week or and that we were celebrating. Or, quite frankly, I needed a hug because it was a crappy week. And so you need to surround yourself with some good friends and a good glass of scotch. And say, okay, what are we going to do next week to make sure it's not like this week? Or what are we going to do more of what we did for this week, And so that's what Celebrates is about. It's a chance for us to get together and we do it online, and you bring the beverage of your choice, water to wine to whiskey, and come and celebrate with other people, like-minded people who are going to help elevate you and cheer you on. So, and that's what we do. We do a little education, motivation, inspiration, a little bit of monetization, but you got to get involved. You got to get there. But it's all about sharing and learning and cheering with other people, and that's what every network should be about.
And just so everybody knows that the C-Suite celebrates every Friday. And I forget what time is it?
It's at 5 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Eastern. So wherever you're in the world, just set your clock for that, and that's what we do it.
And just in the description of this video, you can see my email. Send me an email. Let me know you want to go. I will have Jeff's team contact you and send you a personal invite. I suggest you go. It's really good. I enjoy it tremendously. In fact, I get a bum when you say there's no celebrations because of the holiday or something. I miss it. But I really appreciate it. Jeff. I cannot thank you now one at a time, but I can't thank you enough for being in. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you, brother.
Hey, my pleasure. And everybody, tune in every single time to Stroke of Genius right here on Stroke TV Media.
I appreciate that, bro. Thank you very much. Stay here and I'll be right back.